first off, if you guys are new here, if you guys have never watched my show before, I talk about South Asian news. I'm the Indian Hasanabi. I'm the Tamil Hasanabi. I'm talking about South Asian news. When can I watch the next stream? Next week. Next week. I stream on weekends only. Again, I stream on weekends. I would love to stream every day. Streaming doesn't pay the bills. Talk about Sri Lanka a little bit. Foreign Minister MUM Ali Sabri, protecting the human rights, Sri Lanka voted yes. For those of you who don't know why this is farcical of Sri Lanka to claim the moral high ground on this, is because in 2009, Sri Lanka, pound for pound, play by play, did the exact same thing that Israel is doing right now in Gaza. What you are seeing in Gaza right now, Sri Lanka did the exact same kind of war crimes back in 2009. They pioneered modern counterterrorism, which is why in academic circles, they call it the Sri Lankan strategy or Sri Lankan option. But if you ask MUM Ali Sabri about genocide, you'll say, oh no, Canada has unfairly accused us of genocide. Oh no, Canada has unfairly accused us of genocide. Exact same strategy. Bomb civilian hospitals, bomb people fleeing civilian hospitals, use the human shields excuse. The bulk of the convoy drove out. The remaining 7 trucks moved north into the area, and the Sri Lankan government had just demarcated as a safe or no-fire zone. That morning, the Air Force had dropped leaflets advising dropped leaflets, by the way. Dropped leaflets. Guys, they dropped leaflets into a no-fire zone. Does that sound like anything that is happening right now? The UN workers set up a food distribution hub on a large piece of open ground well inside the safe zone. Israel is literally stealing Sri Lanka's strats. Yes, word for word, exactly what you're seeing right now in Gaza is exactly what happened in Mullivaikal and in Pudukudiyiruppu. Not stealing, they shared. Hold on a second. In academic circles across the world, the winning strategy is now dangerously referred to as the Sri Lankan option, a new way of crushing terrorism using brute military force rather than a political approach. It involves scorched earth tactics, blurring the distinction between civilians and combatants, and enforcing a media blackout. It involves scorched earth tactics, blurring the distinction between civilians and combatants, and enforcing a media blackout. Proponents tend to gloss over the indiscriminate killing of women and children, the violations of international law, and the crushing of a free press. Hey, does this sound familiar to you guys? It should. Worryingly, other countries with ethnic problems have been studying Sri Lanka's approach. The Burmese military, the Thais and the Bangladeshis, for example, when the Sri Lankan military held a 3-day conference in June 2011 to teach other armies in its brutal tactics, the stench of war crimes didn't stop representatives from 40 countries, including the USA, from attending. They had hoped to learn from a country that now claims to be an expert in counterterrorism. What you're seeing in Gaza is not unprecedented. It literally stems from Sri Lanka. It happened just 14 years prior in Sri Lanka. What you're seeing the Israeli government do in Gaza right now, they took notes from the Sri Lankan government. They had hoped. There's another side to the story, the human cost of the Sri Lankan option. The focus of this book is on the final months of the battle between the Tigers and the Sri Lankan military. It is not a history of the whole war and does not tell the suffering of the ordinary soldier or Sinhalese commuter living in fear of bomb blasts. That is the entirely legitimate subject for another book. It is an account of the victory from the perspective of the defeated. Yes, some in this book were terrorists or their sympathizers, but by no means all. This story matters because Sri Lanka is no longer just a country whose people did bad things to each other. It is an unexpected piece of the jigsaw of the discourse on global terrorism. Nobody has told these tales before because there was simply no international journalists or aid workers in the war zone in the final months to send harrowing accounts of civilian suffering to CNN or the BBC. That was an important part of the government's strategy. Independent witnesses were deliberately excluded to distort the writing of history. As a result, perhaps there will never be an agreed account of what actually took place in those final months of war. Sri Lankan history will continue to be written differently according to your ethnic group or political bias. If Tamils and Sinhalese are ever to live together peacefully, then these accounts from survivors need to be heard and acknowledged. Sri Lanka military conference to whitewash war crimes. The Sri Lankan government had invited 54 countries. Here are the countries: Australia, Botswana, Canada, China, Czech Republic, Ghana, Hungary, Indonesia, Israel, Italy, Israel, Japan, Kenya, Malaysia, Israel, Maldives, Mozambique, Nepal, Israel, Nigeria, Oman, Philippines, South Korea, Romania, Singapore, South Africa, Sweden, Switzerland, Tanzania, Turkey, Israel, Ukraine, Zambia, Zimbabwe. I think that the key difference in Palestine, atrocities are atrocities and there's no comparing them, but Tamils were not acknowledged. Maybe Palestine will change this? No. Palestine is not going to suddenly change this. We have to fight for this. Who? We have to fight against propagandists that have buried the atrocities, the genocide Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan government continues to commit against the Tamils. That's who we have to fight. We have to fight propagandists. There are so many people that want to make sure that this gets buried, and we cannot allow that to happen. Why do you think I'm obsessed with this? Because do you realize how hard it is? Do you understand how hard it is to get people to care about this? We scream as loud as possible. Yes, we talked about this earlier. There is state-sanctioned violence happening against the Dongria Khons in Odisha. We have to yell loudly. We don't have any other option but to yell loudly about this. Doing the video, the Tamil genocide video, is going to be very traumatic. We don't have another option but to press on. Because if we don't do this video, then no one is going to know. And it gets further buried. Joint Himalayan Declaration promoting a pluralistic Sri Lanka presented to President English.
Chapter, Venerable Dr. Madam Pagam Asajiti Satera and Chief Prelate of Northern and Eastern Provinces of Siam Sect of the Malbatha Chapter, Venerable Kitalagama Hemasarathera, and members of the Global Tamil Forum called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe and held discussions last evening. During discussions, the Joint Himalayan Declaration, a collaborative effort.
First off, I don't think this meeting is actually going to I don't think it's going to accomplish anything. Part and parcel due to the fact that the people on the left, they're the far-right Sinhalese Buddhist ultranationalists. Why would they ever be interested in reaching a meaningful compromise with Tamils or Muslims, for that matter? Why would they ever be? They think the entire island belongs to them. Why would they ever be interested in working with the Tamils? They have all the political power on the island. They act with impunity. This show of, hey, we got the Tamils and we got the Sinhalese Buddhists to come together. No, you got fascist. These are fascists, guys. These are fascists. These are ultra-nationalists, guys.
Representatives of the Buddhist clergy, including the Chief Prelate of the Amagahapitiya sect of the Amarapura chapter, Venerable Dr. Madam Pagam Asajiti Satera, and Chief...
Let's sit down and talk about it with fascists.
chief prelate of northern and eastern
This is Jubilee. This is
provinces of
literally
Siam sect
Jubilee
of the
shit.
Malwatha chapter, Venerable Kithalagama Hemasaratera, and members of the Global Tamil Forum called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe and held discussions last evening. During discussions, the Joint Himalayan Declaration, a collaborative effort between the Global Tamil Forum and the Buddhist delegation, which advocates for a pluralistic Sri Lanka that actively promotes the well-being of all its communities, was presented to the head of state.
දැන් එන දෙසැම්බර් 12 වෙනිදා OCC Official Creditors Committee රැස් වුණාම අපිට ණය දරාගත හැකි ණයක් තියෙනවා කියලා ප්‍රකාශ කරාම ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ පුද්ගලික ණයකරුවන්. With the old and the economic issue, how much the government should control. Now both has been resolved.
I feel it also happened to a group of people that were not really visible in the mainstream, so people just don't care. Indian equals North Indian. I don't know how many people can relate to this, but when I was young, the entire time I was just told it was a civil war, and then 2 minutes of reading paints a totally different picture, totally different, completely horrifying picture. It feels like they were largely successful in selling the rhetoric that it was just instability within the country. No, they were.
By events. My idea is to hold elections for the presidency next year, as said in the constitution, followed by parliamentary elections and then followed by provincial council elections. I think this
What is not an immediate problem is not a problem for these guys.
devolution of power while sovereignty is all, which is correct because in my view, we are all Sri Lankans and whatever other divisions are when it comes to cricket.
Okay, he's also full of crap here because Sri Lanka is... The idea of Sri Lankan is already like not really inclusive of Tamils whatsoever. This is nonsense. There are other genocides going on right now. The reason you rightfully see so much protest in the U.S. against Israel is because the U.S. is the biggest backer of Israel. And the sole reason that there's not a ceasefire right now, it rarely gets as clear as this. The massacre of Sri Lankan Tamils, on the other hand, was funded and facilitated by so many countries. India was the second biggest culprit, not the U.S. Exactly. Yeah, the only reason that you see this much protest is because there is a stronger relationship with Israel that the United States has than the United States does with Sri Lanka. There is an anti-Tamil sentiment in India as well. A lot of North Indians don't like Tamils to begin with. And the reason they don't like Tamils is not because of these guys. It's not that they don't like Ila Tamils or Sri Lankan Tamils directly. No. BJP and North India in general doesn't like Tamil Nadu because of Periyar. So they're going to take their anger towards Periyar, they're going to take their hatred of Periyar and Annadurai and project it onto, they're just going to immediately say whatever Sri Lanka is doing towards the Tamils must be correct. No, it's like Bracelet Block said, if the Northeast really knew what Sri Lanka did, they would be cheering it. That's how much anti-Tamil sentiment exists in the North. What did Periyar do to the Northeast? Periyar was significantly anti-Brahmanism to the point where he did say some wild shit towards Brahmins. A lot of the North Indian states, which are more directly Brahminified, take offense to that.
Other than that...
And on top of that, it's like Karna says, they feel camaraderie towards the Sinhalese because the Sinhalese are originally North Indians.
We have to look at ourselves, but at the same time, I don't think we need to have everything handled by Colombo. What we can give to the people and what we can release from the government, we must release. With Tamils representing North and the East, we've had a round of discussions. I'm calling them up.
Yes, Sinhalese, these guys are originally North Indians. Yes, they originally come from what is now Odisha and West Bengal. Well, technically not North Indians. Tamils came from South India. The Tamils originally came from South India, and these guys originally came from North India. Wait, think about it. Sinhala is a cousin of Hindi.
Meeting them again on the 13th. I feel we are making...
Where do you think these guys came from? They're also not indigenous to the island.
Progress on all issues.
Sinhala is a distant cousin of English, yes. Where do you think they even came from?
In this declaration, we have kind of captured the key issues that face Sri Lanka as a framework. What we plan to do is to create national conversation, national discussion between people to people. at all levels without party affiliation. So to make it very clear and be transparent, we have also seek meetings with the party leaders in addition to meeting all religious groups when we are here.
My support is there for your venture. First, it's good that you're going in and meeting with all the political party leaders. I think that's a dialogue that you all have to keep. And outside the political parties, there will be other organizations.
Now, here's the thing. A lot of people in the diaspora are going to blame these guys for capitulating, saying like, oh, these guys are sellouts, they're sellouts, they're sellouts, they're sellouts. I don't blame these guys in particular. I don't blame, this is the Tamil delegation, by the way. I don't blame the Tamil delegation for taking this because the situation is incredibly desperate. It is. There are going to be some groups of people that appeal to Western powers directly for help. And there are going to be some people that directly appeal to the Sri Lankan government for help. I don't blame Tamils that think that this is the best way of doing it. I don't think that's productive. But that being said, this is a complete non-starter. Having the very people that can make threats towards Tamils on a daily basis and be guarded by the legal system as part of this bilateral delegation is a non-starter.
And members of the Global Tamil Forum called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe and held discussions last evening.
This isn't going to happen. Like, this is theatrics, is what Ranil is doing. This is what I mean by Ranil will openly display like, oh, we care about the Tamils. I care about the Tamils. And the same thing Sajith Premadasa will do. I want to ask, what can we do? It's reparations, war crimes tribunals, and acknowledgement and apologies. What we can do? Raise awareness. What are the end goals? Complete autonomy for the Northeast. That's the end goal. There was a recent UN vote that the United States vetoed. And Sri Lanka was in favor of it. And so MUM Ali Sabri, the foreign minister, said protecting the human rights, Sri Lanka voted yes.